All right, welcome to Coffee Time. Is it Wednesday?
Yes.
It is Wednesday. Maybe we can solve all the world's problems right here. What do you think? Maybe? Let's go to Psalms chapter 2. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against the anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart. Let us cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, the ends of the earth your possession. If I can turn this page here. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are those who take refuge in him. Isaiah 5, was it verse 2?
50 verse 2, I think.
It's fine.
I'll
we'll look it up. Anyway,
I'll look
Isaiah says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Hebrews chapter 5 says, in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. In being made perfect or complete, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God on high, a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. About this, we have so much to say, but it's hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. Think about that. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. The solid food is for the mature, and those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice in distinguishing good from evil.
Isaiah 5:20.
Isaiah 5:20. Thank you. Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. I'm disturbed by the culture experience that we're having right now, where we seem to be having a childish response in the way that people are responding to good and to evil. All evil needs to be dealt with, and all good should be applauded, and we shouldn't have that difficult a time distinguishing between the two. But there's some super elementary things that are being completely lost here. And there's some very important cultural things and some very important faith practice issues that are coming up right now. The bad thing that happened is the bad thing that happened. It's going to get adjudicated, and justice should be served, and everything should be handled, and it will be. Before you start talking about throw out police, throw out law and order, defund police, disarm police, and I've read letters that have come out in the last 48 hours with very interesting and insane, frankly, propositions being made about making changes and that are nonsense. Before you start changing an industry that you know nothing about or know very little about, why don't you talk to the people that have taken the time to study or have done it for decades and see what has been done or in fact what is being done before people start making blanket suggestions. And I'm going to talk about what this has to do with scripture and what this has to do with theology in a second. But as far as just civility and tranquility, domestic tranquility, there are three ways to maintain a quality police department or any organization. Quality hiring, you hire the right people, you vet them, you don't just hire anybody. You hire we forgot to put the microphone on, the direct mic.
I think it's okay.
It's okay. You hire the right people. You don't hire just anybody. You hire people that are qualified, people that have the right temperament, people that have a certain amount of education. You hire the right people to do the job. And you preclude 95% of your problems. Most of the people that I've seen that have been on the front pages or have been national news have been people that want to watch the details of the events. Really never should have been hired, honestly. They didn't have the temperament, they didn't have the skill set, they weren't vetted, okay? Number one, hiring. Number two, training. And number three, supervision. That's it. That's all you need. Proper hiring, proper training, and proper supervision. If you have those three things in place, you have, and then accountability might be number four. Accountability is number four. But if you have those things, hiring, training, supervision, and accountability, you have everything in place that you need to create and maintain a quality workplace, whether it's a DA's office, a police department, a church, or your business. All of that comes into play, and all that is based on what this book says righteousness is. And I get concerned when I'm listening to all this stuff and even hearing how people respond, watching Facebook and watching comments, and people just like out of nowhere just saying all these wild things. It's like, hold up, let's talk about good and evil for a second. This is let's just get back to the childlike level. Let's just get back to milk. The thing that has precipitated all this is horribly wrong. However, on the other side, if you comply, if you don't commit crime, you're not encountering the police, number one. Number two, if when you encounter the police or authority, you comply, then there's not a conflict, number two, right? This is basic milk stuff. This is basic stuff. Beyond that, there's a whole world that, yeah, those guys, rather than continuing in conflict with someone that was not compliant with them, they called the supervisor to the scene. The supervisor could have negotiated with the guy, and they might have de-escalated, and other things might have been done differently. That's out there. That's more advanced stuff. But what about us? Why are we even encountering this? I want to tell you why we're encountering this. In Psalm 2, basically, leaders of the world, rulers, looked at Jesus and said, "You're not the boss of me. You don't tell me what to do. I'm not under your rule." And God sits on his throne and he giggles. He chuckles. Really? I made you. And I'm going to tell you why right now there's this backlash and there's a social movement, I believe, against the career of police officers as a whole, is because the rest of the world has already given up accountability. Accountability is not in the government. It's not in the court system, for sure. I can give you case after case. We just watched documentation of Jeff Epstein and how the FBI stepped aside from it, the DA in Florida stepped aside from it, and it didn't get handled until a law came about protecting the rights of victims. And the Victims' Rights Act caused it to be re-examined by a righteous judge that said these victims, these little girls, these children that were trafficked, their rights were violated because this was not handled with due process. We have a world that has set aside accountability. And all the laws and all the penalties that we have, very few of them are applied, and if so, they're applied selectively by those who choose to apply them to whom they feel like applying them to. There is very little justice in the criminal justice system. It's a judicial system. And so that's happened from the top down. And so when you come down to the level of a rank and file guy that's out on the street trying to do his job that he believes will be followed through on later, it's the last man standing. Your police officers, your first responders, your soldiers, they're the last conservative people on the planet. They're the last ones that actually believe that there's a right and wrong. Above their heads, it's already been jettisoned. We better look at why that's happening. And Epstein's a perfect example of it. And he's met his maker already. Okay, he's met his maker, and he's encountering judgment right now. But we have to think about why it is that our culture, Ravi Zacharias, who recently went to heaven, spoke of a place in the United States that was just coming down on Christmas. Don't you call it Christmas? Don't you call it a Christmas tree? It's a holiday tree. You can't sing this song. You can't say this. You can't. Basically, a city that just set aside, that secularized itself from Jesus Christ. And then they had a massive storm there, in which many people it devastated the place. And then someone said, well, where was God? Where was God? In Revelation chapter 3, Jesus finds himself outside the church. He knocks on the door and says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you let me in, I'll eat with you. You can eat with me. We can fellowship. Jesus found himself outside the church. And there are many churches in this nation that Jesus is not even inside that church. He's on the outside. And I fear that our nation and the attitude and the heart of this nation is looking to God right now and saying, you don't boss me, you don't tell me, we don't have standards. We don't have to have standards. We don't have to hold the standards. Whatever rules there are, we don't have to acknowledge that. And that's where we are. And the Antichrist is called the man of lawlessness for a reason. And I'm telling you, I'm 52, fixing to be 53 years old. For most of my life, I've wondered, how can the world come to the place where it could be deceived by an Antichrist, a man of lawlessness, and just follow him, whatever he says, like stuff. And everybody just starts saying the same thing. And I turn the TV on, I just hear this stuff. I'm like, what? And I look on Facebook, and I hear people just parroting this insanity. Things that make absolutely no sense. I'm like, what? And I see it. I see it, how easy the world follows. These little sound bites and whatever that are completely in violation of what this book teaches. Don't be a child. Learn this book, live this book. God is a God of order. And we're not legalists. We don't tie our salvation to the Old Testament law. But the Old Testament law taught us, Paul said. It's our schoolmaster that we can't keep the law, that we need his grace, and we need to put our faith in him for our salvation. But the law, Jesus said, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill the law. What does that mean? He obeyed it all of it. And while he was obeying all of it, he was qualifying himself to be our substitutionary sacrifice on the cross. And so that law, while we can't keep it, and we need the grace, thank God for it, nevertheless, it's still a reflection of the heart of God in his precepts and his priorities and his core values. And that's what makes all this theological and biblical, because man as a whole, and you can see it in Pirates of the Caribbean, it demonstrated sort of the way our culture shifted when they talked about the rules of being a pirate, and they kept saying, well, it's really more of a guideline than a rule. And that's where our culture is today. There are no rules anymore. Nobody wants to hold anybody to anything. Nobody wants to be held accountable to anything. And accountability for cops, of course. Accountability for everybody. For the people that encounter the cops. For all of us. Based on what? Based on this. We can't look to God and say, you're not the boss of me, and just think that suddenly everything's just going to be rainbows and butterflies. It doesn't work that way. How it works is we come to, do you see what it says here? That we are saved when we obey the gospel of Christ. Did you know that becoming a Christian involves obedience? Actual obedience. One of my professors, who was a theology professor, when he would witness to people, and they want to throw questions out there to block the idea of salvation. And he used to wisely say, John Perlow used to say, if I could answer every question that you have to your complete satisfaction, will you then obey the gospel of Christ? That's what it comes down to. We are accountable to God. And when you stand before God, you're not going to be able to look around and have any of your buddies behind you or any of your friends or any of the people that pump any garbage into your ears or into your head that you absorbed or you embraced. When you stand before Jesus, it's going to be you and Jesus. And I hope that when you do that you're already ready, that you're already his, that you've already taken this beyond milk to meat, that you've taken the salvation, but then you begin to apply righteousness to your life. That's the meat. Right and wrong, that's the milk. Salvation is the milk. The meat is how to distinguish between right and wrong and how to do right in the midst of a perverse and a confused and a deceived world that we live in. Don't be deceived. Don't be a child. Trust him. Follow him. Love him. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your grace. We thank you for the milk. There's a right and wrong, and we need to follow you in salvation. We need to obey you and become saved. And then there's meat. We should know, as a result of dining on your word, the difference between right and wrong, live it, lead others in it, be prepared to explain it, and make disciples. And let it be true, Lord. Let it be true of us. In Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. See you Friday.